I find when we kind of quiet and listen, we realize, we're all on the same team. We all want the same things. And so if anything, it just creates an opportunity for us to have even greater impact and maybe accelerate, how quickly we can bring solutions to market, or how quickly we can bring solutions to our communities.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are breaking through the status quo of business as usual. My name is Tyler Kelly. I'm here with my co-host Leigh-Ann Buchanan. And tonight we're coming to you from the Slam Agency St. Louis headquarters. And we're super fortunate because we have with us Yvena Atkins, Strategy Manager at Accenture.
Nice to meet you guys. Nice to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Yvena, thank you for joining us. We had a chance to kind of get to know each other a little bit at the beginning. But from what I understand, your role at Accenture focuses on how you can infuse innovation to help growth-focused companies maybe do what they do better and really address some of the biggest challenges that they experience and what they're trying to solve. So I'm kind of curious. What's one of the most interesting challenges that you've had the pleasure of working with clients on?
Yeah, first I'll back up for those who might not be familiar with Accenture. Accenture is a global consulting and technology company. We have 500,000 employees globally, and we have four main lines of business. So strategy and consulting, where I sit, technology, digital, and operations. And we basically offer end-to-end solutions for our clients, starting with strategy and consulting. How can we help you work through some of your biggest challenges, whether that's growing in a new market, reducing costs, strategizing your workforce strategies? That's what we're here to do.
Excellent. And so talk about, if you can, one of the most interesting challenges or topics you've had the pleasure of working on.
Yes, I would say in addition to the client work that I've done, I've been fortunate to work with our corporate citizenship practice. And at Accenture, that's our strategic philanthropy group. So we do grant making and provide people like me to do pro bono consulting for nonprofits and for good entities. One of the signature initiatives I worked on was called the Inclusive Future of Work. It was a global program, and it was fueled by a research report that basically said, intelligent technologies are going to change the way we live and the way we work, and under-resourced communities are going to be even more at risk. How can we as public and private sector leaders come together to address this challenge? So after that report, Accenture basically drank our own champagne. So we responded to the call to action, and we selected 2 cities globally to run pilot programs. Those 2 cities were London and St. Louis.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the pilot program all about?
Yeah, so in St. Louis, fortunate to work with a brilliant team, and the pilot was around collective impact. So there's a lot of great programs and efforts already in St. Louis around workforce development. How can we amplify those existing efforts and work together so that we can have even greater impact? So we worked with the St. Louis Promise Zone. We worked with local workforce development agencies, IT training providers, and even the ride-sharing company Lyft to support workers in the Promise Zone, the St. Louis Promise Zone, who might have been in routine, lower complexity roles, transition into IT careers.
So this idea of upskilling and this idea of kind of the fourth industrial revolution being the great displacer and the great kind of uncoverer of a lot of inequities that exist is one of the big challenges that a lot of communities are dealing with. Now more than ever, we're seeing that kind of gap in digital literacy and digital access. Walk us through maybe some of the challenges that you were able to identify that serve as obstacles for people getting opportunities to upskill and getting opportunities to maybe transform the work that they do to be more responsive to the needs of a future economy.
Absolutely. I think especially when you're dealing with under-resourced communities, it's not enough just to get folks to training. We can take, let's say, a 34-year-old mom who's a cashier at Schnucks, which is a local grocery store in St. Louis, that might have 3 kids. Just getting her to training is going to be hard. She has other priorities. She might not have a car, so she has transportation challenges, she has childcare challenges. and maybe the hours that the training might be available might not work with her schedule if she has a part-time job. So doing this work, working with our ecosystem partners, we realized that it's not enough just to get people to training. They need support services. And so that's why we actually work with Lyft in St. Louis to provide free rides to and from training for folks who had transportation barriers.
I think that's often one of the overlooked areas around providing opportunities. Is it's not enough to provide an opportunity to address a gap. We have to look at the inroads and access points to ensure that the target population, like who we're actually trying to serve, can make sure the opportunity is a right fit for them. I want to kind of shift gears and kind of start a conversation around this idea of collective impact, and definitely have Tyler jump in. But one of the big challenges to collective impact is like wrangling all the different parties, because typically everybody has their own idea of what the problem is, their own idea of the solution, and also very differing perspectives of what the priority should be. What are some of the things that you've learned around how to actually create collaborative ecosystems towards making meaningful change?
I think in St. Louis, there's a lot going on in workforce development, which is great. There's a lot of great energy, but to your point, there's a lot of different efforts. And so how can we wrangle folks? I think starting with the common objective, like we all want to solve the same problem or solve pieces of the same problem. And we approached it like we would approach a client situation. And so being data driven, coming with research and not just a good idea or, not just feel good feelings for wanting to make a difference in your community, but come with the research, come with the data, come with a collaborative spirit, and come with a bias for action. Let's not just get in a room and talk, but let's, think about how we can actually put our ideas into practice.
Now, are there any similarities or differences with London? Like the experiences there, like what's that all about?
So I will try to take a stab for my UK counterparts, but I would say we face similar challenges,
okay.
Especially for the communities they were serving, very similar to the St. Louis Promise Zone, so North St. Louis. And there are a lot of great workforce development programs going on over there. I think that their government is a little bit more, I would say, progressive when it comes to workforce development solutions, more so like around apprenticeship programs. That's going to be something that's very widely implemented in the UK, whereas in the US, I think we definitely have a great start, but we can definitely do more. So I would say in London, from what I know, we face similar challenges when it comes to competing initiatives, when it comes to the demographics of the folks that we're serving, but they're a little bit more progressive as far as like the amount of time they've worked on workforce development solutions.
I've always thought of St. Louis as, like the confluence of the east, the west, the north, the south, and like everything just happens here. And the great thing about that is like the negative things happen, but then like the solutions, when they do rise up out of St. Louis, like they will be applicable to the U.S. as a whole, right? Give me some insight in your personal experience in how solutions coming out of St. Louis are helping the nation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can even talk about what we did in St. Louis with the Inclusive Future work. We started with 2 cities, London and St. Louis. But for St. Louis, we basically created a blueprint that has now been replicated across other cities in the U.S. So from what happened in St. Louis, 20 plus cities have been activated. That's what we're saying. And so we go in there with research. We convene public and private sector leaders, and then we ideate on what solutions might make sense for our communities. That's something straight out of St. Louis that now has impact beyond the region.
I love the idea of straight out of St. Louis. I
Yeah.
feel like that should be the tagline. But, getting a little bit granular here, what are some of the lessons that you learned from this really fascinating kind of effort around the future of work?
Yeah, I think something that just jumps to mind immediately is we need to make sure we're amplifying the voice of workers when we ideate on these solutions. Oftentimes, these people like me and you, they're sitting in a room well-intentioned, but we don't know what it's like to be that 34-year-old, grocery clerk at Schnucks with 3 kids. And so how can we bring that person, that voice to the table so that we can really create holistic solutions?
So the idea of amplifying voices is something that in Venture Cafe world, we talk a lot about when we think about inclusion. So inclusion is not just the loudest voice in the room or the most dominant personality or perspective, but it also requires us to listen better to people that often are not the ones speaking. What are some of the things that you learned about listening with empathy, maybe listening with intentionality, and listening to hear perhaps in a way that the people you're speaking to don't know how to articulate what their needs are?
Listening is critical. And I think that will help address having the worker voice at the center of these solutions. I find when we kind of quiet and listen, we realize, we're all on the same team. We all want the same things. And so if anything, it just creates an opportunity for us to have even greater impact and maybe accelerate how quickly we can bring solutions to market, or how quickly we can bring solutions to our communities. So I would say, listening, it's just helpful. It is helpful, but it's opened my eyes, just realizing that we are all on the same page. We all want the same things for the most part. And, we all can relate. We all might have a friend or a family member or, someone we work with that, is connected to someone who is going through whatever we're trying to solve for. And so it's very easy to, I think, maybe make those connection points if we just quiet and listen.
So I want to shift gears, because one of the things that we know about you that the listeners don't yet is that you are a South Florida woman that transplanted to St. Louis.
That's true.
And typically it's the other way around, right? It's like you go from the north to the south to the warmer weather, but not the case here. So tell us about your personal experience coming from South Florida, moving to St. Louis.
Yeah.
And what are some of the differences and similarities of the different ecosystems?
Yeah. Well, first I'll go a little bit before Fort Lauderdale. So I always start with, I'm an immigrant. So I was born on the island of St. Martin after my parents actually settled there after leaving Haiti. They were fleeing an oppressive regime. And then we eventually ended up in Fort Lauderdale. And I spent my formative years there, surrounded by a very close-knit working class Haitian community. And I think now with my adult lens on, I realize what a feat it was for my parents to provide the opportunities that I have, which has fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life, which is why, it's just really important for me to focus on purpose-driven work and to, be able to do the same thing for other people that my parents did for me. So just wanted to plug that in.
Did they learn English once they got here, or did they how was that experience?
So they definitely speak English, but we speak Creole Haitian Creole in the house. And I would say my mom's English probably isn't the best. But it's been helpful for me because I'm away from my Haitian community, call my mom and know that's how I can stay in practice. That's how I can keep the language fresh. We eventually settled in Fort Lauderdale, had a great time. I went to the University of Florida for undergrad, and then started my career actually in Atlanta. Came to St. Louis, as I mentioned to Leigh-Ann, for a guy who is not my husband. And then I left St. Louis, went to Chicago for business school, boomeranged to St. Louis, and now I'm here to stay.
What do you love about St. Louis? Because apparently we're not convincing you to come back to South Florida.
I was pleasantly surprised by St. Louis. I didn't think it was a place that we would stay long. But I am pleasantly surprised about how easy it is to live here, how affordable it is to live here, the warm people that we have met here, basically the community that we built here. It's in the middle of everything, so it's actually very easy to get to. Atlanta, which I lived before, we have friends in Nashville and Chicago. Everything's a quick drive around. But I would say what has been key for us is just how easy it is, how affordable it is, and then the people we've met here.
One of the things that you said when you were talking a little bit about your background that struck out to me was that your kind of familiar journey and your kind of origin story helped shape your focus on purpose-driven work.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into that a little bit deeper.
Sure.
How do you kind of define purpose-driven work, and why did it become so important to you?
Yeah. Because when you look at the origin story, the trajectory of my life has fundamentally been changed just because of the opportunities that I had access to. Even something as simple as being a naturalized citizen in the U.S., which is key. I became a naturalized citizen when I was in the third grade. And so it wasn't something that I always had, obviously, because I wasn't born here. But I wouldn't have been able to probably, go to college as easily as I was able to if I didn't have that. And so I just understand how having access to opportunities can help not only change your life, but change the lives of the people in your community. Because now here I am, and I'm not only doing things for me, but I'm doing things to better my community. I am a regional board member for NPower in St. Louis, and so they provide tech training for young people in St. Louis from under-resourced communities. I'm a storytime reader at Urban League Head Start centers, and so I just understand what opportunities, what education can do for people, and I just want to make sure that too much is given, much is required, and I want to make sure that I'm doing that as well.
You know what time it is?
Uh-oh.
Lightning round.
It is time for the lightning round.
Okay, this is my
Shuffle the cards.
I actually can't shuffle cards. I'm really, really bad at them, but this is my favorite part. The conversation is good, but serendipitous collision. So Let's see.
You ready? And you want me to start?
You can start.
What do you dream of achieving one day?
Oh, what do I dream of achieving one day? There's so many things. So I'm trying to what would be a good one to talk about. I have always been fascinated by hotels. And so I think either in St. Martin or in Haiti, where I have roots, being able to have a villa that I could name after my father, that would be something that I would be happy to achieve.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's an awesome legacy.
Yeah.
An awesome legacy. What virtue do you want more of in your life?
What virtue do I want more of in my life? You have to remind me, virtues. Would empathy be a virtue?
Sure is.
Okay, well, I would say empathy. And, we touched a little bit about empathy earlier on in the conversation. And it's just really important to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes to really, understand where they're coming from. And I think that's really how we'll move forward as a society, as, community, when we can empathize better.
True that. What is your perfect day?
My perfect day. Actually, in quarantine, I've had lots of perfect days because I wake up and I make hot tea. I actually drink the same tea that you drink. So I read my little, yogi. I read my
like
inspirational note.
Thing?
No.
I mean, it's just a lot.
But yes, I make myself some hot tea. I have 2 kitties that I love, so I play with my cats, and then we get some work done. I put in my productive hours, and then I am able to, I love to cook. So I cook for my husband, and we watch a movie. And so for me, it's just being able to have quiet time, being able to spend time with the people I love, and do work that fulfills me. So I've had lots of perfect days.
Can I do a twofer? Because she said cooking.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite dish to cook?
I love all types of Caribbean food, but I would say, Haitian. I love Haitian food. So I make really good rice and peas, all types of rice and peas. And so I love to cook rice. I love to, experiment with not only the colors, but the textures, different vegetables you can put in there. So I would say I like to cook rice and peas.
In Haiti, I had this amazing mushroom rice.
Do you John?
Oh my gosh. So good.
Exactly.
So good.
Yeah. So it's like a black rice, right? With dried mushrooms. And so, yeah.
Delicious. Shout out to Haiti, Texas.
Making me hungry.
Okay, so, this is a good one. What have you witnessed that has strengthened your faith in humanity?
What have I witnessed that has strengthened my faith in humanity? You know what? I'll just go back to me being a storytime reader at the Urban League Head Starts. I love reading to those kids. They just have so much energy and they're so positive and they're just so impressionable, which is why I think it's our responsibility to make sure that they have opportunities they have. But just seeing the joy and the innocence in the faces of these children, that strengthens my faith in humanity. That this generation and the next generation will look out for the world.
What makes you lose track of time?
Oh, I'm a research geek. So, and it could be about anything. Like if I, am researching about a coup in some country, I will go down the rabbit hole of research, and I will learn everything about that coup in that nation. And so I lose track of time when I'm researching. It doesn't matter the topic. If it's something I need to research, I will lose time.
I love it.
So Yvena, how can people get in touch with Accenture, obviously, and you, if you're on social media, like how can people reach out, volunteer, help, whatever?
Yeah. So Accenture.com if you want to learn more about the company and all the cool work that we do across the world. And I'm on LinkedIn, Yvena Atkins, and happy to chat.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a fun conversation, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins.